Hello students, welcome you to the English class. In today's session, I'll be teaching you the lesson Nelson Mandela, which is an extract from his autobiography, A Long Walk to Freedom. This lesson being big, we will divide it into two parts. In today's session, we will deal with the inaugural ceremony of the black government and Nelson Mandela's speech. In South Africa, for a long time, for about more than 3 centuries, the white-skinned people ruled the country. The black-skinned people were treated very badly. They were given inhuman treatment as they were the slaves of the white. The black-skinned people struggled. There was a brutal struggle and huge sacrifice to get the freedom. In South Africa, there was a system called apartheid, and in this system, it was a policy or a system of segregation of the people on the grounds of race, on the grounds of color of their skin. So accordingly, the population of South Africa was divided into two parts, the white-skinned people and the black-skinned people. So during the white-skinned people's rule, the black-skinned people suffered a lot. They struggled a lot to achieve the freedom, and finally, they were free. They achieved the freedom, they were elected, they won the elections, and they formed the government in South Africa. First time in the history of the country, the black government formed, the black-skinned people formed their government, which was a democratic government and a non-racial government. They replaced the white-skinned people's government, which was just the harshest government. The inhuman treatment was given during their rule. So they replaced, the Nelson Mandela's government replaced this rule, this government, and they would respect all the people equally, irrespective of the color of their skin. So there was equality now. And during the inaugural ceremony, Nelson Mandela was accompanied by his daughter Zenani. The ceremony took place in the sandstone amphitheatre formed by the Union Buildings of Pretoria. It was held on 10th May 1994, referred to as an autumn day because in South Africa falls in the southern hemisphere and the May month falls in the autumn season. So it was referred to as the autumn day. So on the day of the ceremony, his daughter accompanied him and Mr. de Klerk was sworn in as the second deputy president, and then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as the first deputy president of South Africa. And of course, Nelson Mandela took the oath as the president of the country. In his oath, he pledged to the country to uphold and obey the constitution and that he would devote himself to the well-being, to the good, to the welfare of the republic and his nation. That was his oath. So what was his oath? That he is going to uphold and obey the constitution. That he is going to work hard, he was going to devote himself to the well-being of the nation. To his inaugural ceremony, many distinguished international leaders were present. First time in the history of the country, 140 countries, the leaders from 140 countries participated, witnessed this inaugural ceremony. And so Nelson Mandela was overwhelmed with the huge gathering that was present for his inaugural ceremony. During the inaugural ceremony, he mentions the extraordinary human disaster. He begins his speech with the extraordinary human disaster and the glorious human achievement that was a newborn liberty. Now what is this extraordinary human disaster that Nelson Mandela refers to? As I told you, during the apartheid system, the white-skinned people ruled the black-skinned people and they brutally struggled to achieve the freedom. Lots of lives were lost. They sacrificed their lives. Nelson Mandela was jailed for 24 years in the prison, and during this time he was mercilessly beaten. Many of his comrades, patriots, lost their lives, their precious lives. And finally, so this is the extraordinary human disaster he refers to. And finally, they achieved the freedom, and that is the glorious achievement he refers to. So during the ceremony, he thanked the international leaders for having come and taken the position to witness their ceremony. He was also pained because his comrades, the patriots of South Africa, who fought for the freedom, who struggled for the freedom, who lost their lives for the freedom, and who had paved the way for him to fight for the freedom, were not there. They had lost their lives. They were not there to see what their freedom had brought. What was the result of their struggle? What their struggle brought? The freedom that was achieved after their struggle, they were not there to see. So Nelson Mandela felt very bad. He felt very sad because of this. Then in his speech, he also promises to liberate the people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, and gender discrimination. He promised that in his country, all will be equal. There will be no discrimination, there will be no sufferings, and no gender discrimination. There will be no deprivation and no poverty. That is what he promised. So that was the promise that he gave to the people. So remember, he promised the people to liberate them from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, and gender discrimination. He set the ideals for his country that never, never, never shall the sun set on such a glorious achievement, on the freedom that he has achieved. In his autobiography, he mentions that the military generals who once arrested him now saluted him. He was touched by their gesture. In his autobiography, he also mentions that he has learned the meaning of courage from his comrades, from his companions. He says that courage is not the absence of fear, but a triumph over it. Once you conquer the fear, then you are brave. That is what he learned from the struggle, from the brutal struggle, from the long period of oppression. Nelson Mandela, during the inaugural ceremony, was thinking about the past, about the profound, deep wound that the white government had created in them. He mentions in his autobiography that due to this long and brutal struggle and oppression by the white, they have produced the unintended effect, and that is the men of extraordinary heights were produced. The people like Oliver Tambo's, Walter Sisulu's, Chief Lithulis, these were the men born with extraordinary courage, wisdom, and generosity. He says that their similarity will never be found again. Nelson Mandela replaced the white government that was just and harshest government in South Africa. The government was replaced with Nelson Mandela's democratic, non-racial government. He also mentioned in his autobiography that his people is his finest wealth. His country may be rich in minerals, but he says that his people, who are finer and truer than the purest diamond, are his greatest wealth. He also mentions that man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but can never be extinguished. During the time of his imprisonment, he says that during the grimmest time of his imprisonment, the glimmer, the humanity that was shown by a God kept him going. So, in this part, we have learned about the inaugural ceremony. Where did it take place? When did it take place? And what did Nelson Mandela say in his address speech? He mentions about his extraordinary extraordinary disaster, human disaster, the loss of lives, the sacrifice. And he mentions about the newborn liberty, the newborn government. He also mentions about his comrades who have turned up, who have achieved a great height of courage and wisdom due to the brutal struggle and oppression by the white government. So this is what you have to remember about this lesson in this part. We will continue the next part, that is his hunger for freedom and how his hunger for freedom changed his life, animated his life. That we will learn in the second part. So for today, you have to remember this much. And if you have not read the lesson, please read the lesson. You will understand the lesson better if you read it. And also for the next session, you will be ready if you read the lesson. So if you have understood this lesson, kindly share it with your friends. Kindly comment on it and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you.